Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the second video that's going to be in our Cooperative Security Fabric demo. My name is Devin Adams, and in the last video we just kind of talked briefly what the security fabric was. I didn't go into that in too much detail, by the way, because we just got done talking about it in class, but essentially it's using a protocol, right? The FortiTelemetry protocol to essentially talk to the FortiGate products or the Fortinet products that are downstream from a main FortiGate. And what the goal is here is to give us more transparency or more, single pane of management of what's going on beyond our firewall. So in the first video, we kind of saw how it kind of stunk. But let me take a second here and zoom in. So before we hop in here and start configuring this, some things just to keep in mind. So this next generation firewall, right, is just a FortiGate that we've designated at the perimeter to act as our upstream FortiGate. All the other FortiGates here in our topology are going to report to this upstream FortiGate using the FortiTelemetry. Now, port 3 is pointing inside to this core area. So we're going to want to make sure that FortiTelemetry is turned on as a management interface. As a management protocol on that interface on our next generation firewall. And then as port 1 is turned on in these guys, because they're reporting out towards port 1, FortiTelemetry is going to be turned on there. Now we're also going to take this a step further. You don't need to, but I think it's a better experience by turning on device discovery also. What this will do is essentially treat these devices as individual references instead of just being IP addresses. So I am going to wait on the last FortiGates that we plugged in here on the fly as our third example in our last video, and that is enabling the security fabric behind non-Fortinet products. In theory, it should tunnel using SSL back to the upstream FortiGates, but I haven't tried it myself, so I much rather try it and see what happens than reading about it somewhere. So let's go ahead and begin configuring the security fabric. So I'm going to go onto my FortiGates here, and I'm going to use this management PC to do it. So let's start with our next generation firewall at the perimeter. All right. And that will just take a moment to load. And I'm going to go to network. I'm going to go to interfaces. And when you're defining these interfaces, I'm assuming that more information is going to be the better. So if you notice, none of these are really defined as roles. So just for completeness, I am just going to go into this port 1 here and give it a name. It drives me nuts, by the way, when aliases aren't being used. So we'll just say WAN 1. We'll give it a role as WAN. I won't set the estimated bandwidth. Alright. Alright, and then port 2 we'll just call WAN 2. Now this doesn't have anything to do with the fabric, except for it drives me nuts not having them named. So, alright, so there we go. Alright, let's get back to the question here. So, port 3 is actually the interface that's porting towards our internal network. Alright, so I'm going to open this bad boy up, and this is where the beginning of the cooperative fabric begins. So for starters, I'm going to define this as LAN. Alright, now normally the role doesn't do much except for hide options that might break other interfaces like the WAN. We don't turn on DHCP server on the WAN. We don't have to pass out IP addresses to our internet service provider. So it does things like that. But I was reading up on the security fabric, and defining your roles, right, will have a better experience. So we'll see what that means here shortly. But I'm going to name this internal, just so we have a name. And this is where it becomes important, ladies and gentlemen, for anyone who ever watches this. FortiTelemetry which they renamed the FortiClient. It used to be called FortiClient in 5.2. It's now called FortiTelemetry for both the security fabric and also for our Fortinet client's endpoint control. This needs to be pointing towards our internal network. All right, so that is pretty important. If that's not turned on, by the way, it will just simply drop the traffic. All right, just like any of these other management protocols. Okay. Also, I'm going to turn on device discovery, device detection, and I am going to do active scanning. Now, that's going to be up to you if you want the FortiGate to actually probe what's out there. I'm in a safe lab environment. I don't have to worry about bombarding the FortiGate with too much to do, so I'm going to leave active scanning on. So this is so we get a more granular view of our objects that are connected to it. So I'm going to hit OK to commit that. All right, so that's the first step, is to make sure the FortiTelemetry is pointed towards the right interface. Now I'm actually going to configure the security fabric. So I'm going to go to System. Here's the Cooperative Security Fabric. Okay, and there's a couple of other things that integrate into the security fabric, like the FortiWeb, the FortiMail, right? The FortiSandbox. Okay, but here we're going to turn on the FortiFabric. And the fact that we're leaving off the upstream FortiGate nominates this FortiGate as being the upstream FortiGate. Okay, so we're going to give it a group name. Fortinet's fine. Just make sure this password is okay. There's no eyeball here to double check it. So there we go. So that's step one. So let's go ahead and now go to our other devices, our other two devices here, and point them inwards with the FortiTelemetry, and then turn on device discovery down this direction and see what happens. So let's do it. All right, so I will start with my intersegmented firewall. Okay. Network interfaces. Now this, the port 1, I am just going to label for myself external, just to let it know, right, that it's pointing towards the external interface. So it's really pointing towards the core, but that's just for me. So FortiTelemetry is turned on, and that's what we want, right? We want FortiTelemetry pointing towards our upstream FortiGates, okay? And that's going to be up to you if you want device detection turned on. You probably don't need it on, though, on the access FortiGates. We're going to see if that breaks anything. It really shouldn't. This is the important part, though, okay? You want to make sure FortiTelemetry is turned on, all right? And I'll actually leave the rules by itself to see what happens there. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Now port 3, which is actually our internal one, FortiTelemetry needs to be turned on if we have any kind of endpoint control happening. Okay, and it looks like device detection was already turned on, and we saw that, right, when we were exploring the FortiView. Before we turned on the cooperative fabric, we saw client 10 being discovered. So there you go. That's the reason why it was doing so. This is also for any kind of Forti client that might be there. I'm just going to label this internal. All right, good. I'm going to hit OK. So now we have device detection happening at port 3. All right, so it should be able to take those discovered devices, map them by IP addresses, and push them up to the FortiGate using FortiTelemetry. Now let's join it to the security fabric. All right. Looks like this was set up for the lab environment, so I'm just going to pretend like that's not in there. All right. But here we go. So normally this will be shut off. We're going to want to point it upstream, and we're going to want to make sure that we can connect to this port 3 on the next generation firewall, and that is the IP address, by the way, of that next generation firewall. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, and that should be it. Let's go ahead and do the DC one now. All right. Here's our data center firewall. So I'm going to go to network. I'm going to go to interfaces. Once again, drives me nuts. So I'm going to change this to just say maybe external to let it know that's pointing towards the external interface. All right. Now you see how FortiTelemetry is not turned on? Bloop. We need to have it turned on, or it's just not gonna talk to that upstream FortiGate. And device detection, right? So we can maybe see what's pointing this direction. Now, the lab in the book did not have us do device detection pointing this direction. I'm going to turn it on just to see what happens. All right, it just might not be necessary because we already have the upstream FortiGate pointing device discovery in the other direction. You know what? Yeah, we'll just leave it on. We'll see what happens. I'm always up for breaking things on camera. So, all right, so there you go. And now we're going to take our port 3. All right, I'm going to call this internal. And like I said, I'll leave off the roll just to have a little comparison of what it's like to having it on. And we'll turn on FortiTelemetry just in case we have some kind of a, FortiClient that might be connecting later on. But this is also important. So device discovery needs to be turned on after port 3. And the reason why is because the agentless device discovery does not go past broadcast domains without the FortiClient. All right. So here we go. And now that that's taken care of, let's go to our system settings. And let's go to our cooperative fabric. And let's go ahead and turn it on, right? So Fortinet, we'll leave it at Fortinet. Make sure you put in the correct password. Okay. And we are connecting to an upstream FortiGate. And that upstream FortiGate is going to be the NGFW at our perimeter. And it's going to be 10. Come on. 10.1.0.254. Okay. We're going to hit apply. Changes saved successfully. And that should be it. So now, using that FortiTelemetry, we should be able to, in theory, log into our next generation firewall and get the reported information back from those FortiGates like they were an extension of our main FortiGate. In theory. Let's see if it works, okay? So here we are back on the next generation firewall. The cooperative security fabric's been turned on with FortiTelemetry on the right interfaces. Maybe it won't work. It'll give us a good opportunity to troubleshoot. All right, I'm just giving it a second to load up here. All right, so let's go to FortiView. And if you guys remember from the last video, it was kind of lame, right? Let's see if it improves at all. Now we have nothing. Cute. Is there anything here? All right. Did I put FortiTelemetry on the wrong interface? Now there should be at least something there. That's the weird thing. Here we go. Device count maybe. All right. Okay, okay. That's all right. We'll give it all a second just to kind of think here. All right, not much is going on. That's not what I was expecting. So let's go ahead and take a look using some debug commands. All right. So I'm going to go to my command line here. And we are going to use our diagnosed test application. And there is a security fabric one. All right, let's go ahead and do a 1 to show the stats. All right, and it looks like we have our two FortiGates connected. Okay, so I am not too sure why that is not showing properly. Let me go ahead and close out of my web browser and just make sure that it wasn't caching or anything like that. Sometimes with our web-based GUIs here, they can act a little wonky. Okay, there we go. All right, physical topology. No, I'm still not seeing anything. Let's see, 5 minutes, device counts, device type, device traffic. Interesting, interesting, interesting. That should at least have the first part there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to stop the video and I'm going to do some troubleshooting here, and then I am going to report back. But essentially it looks like nothing here is really working, which is odd. So and once again, that might just be a limitation of my FortiGates being in this VM environment, because there's not a lot of resources to run all of these off of my laptop. But it would be interesting to see if my FortiGate's been melted, right? So I'll be right back, guys. All right, guys, sorry about that. Yeah, that sucked. Anyways, I found out now. You guys saw me configure it, and everything was supposed to work, and obviously it didn't. That sometimes happens. It's just fine. So you'll see that in several other videos. So what turned out the problem to be was essentially when I just made this tonight, and when I was dropping the licenses on my FortiGates, I happened to have the same license for the next generation firewall as I did for my ISFW. Now, yeah, you're gonna witness this, right? If you try to join anything in like an HA cluster or through the security fabric, if there's conflicting serial numbers, well, that's how it actually defines the FortiGates. So essentially what happened is once the connection was up, and I saw that during my debug commands using the security fabric debugging commands, it just pretty much froze itself up. So it wasn't until I went a little bit deeper that I saw the error output there being conflicting FortiGates. So once I dropped a different license on the next generation firewall, lo and behold, if I can actually find a GUI here, here we go. Now that the security fabric is configured and up and running, and we go to FortiView, our physical topology actually makes sense. So let me zoom in here a little bit. So you guys saw me put the WAN interface role on port 1 and port 2 on the next generation firewall, and we're actually now seeing that as upstream. And then we can see the firewalls coming off of our main FortiGate. So as you can also see, we can see traffic generating, the name of the devices, right? And it's pretty slick, guys. So here we go. I can even look at a historical hour view and all the different traffic. And we didn't get that before. So before, you guys saw in the first video, it was pretty bland without the security fabric. Now we can actually see it all the way down our stream. So it gives us one level of management there, and I think that is pretty slick, guys. So now this is the non-FortiGate device. So right off the bat, you can see that it's just recognizing it as a NAT device. It really can't decide what it is. And that's mainly because we're using virtual machines, so it can't footprint it or identify it using like a MAC address, OUI, or anything like that. So, and we pretty much lose our transparency after that. So let's go ahead and end the video here. Once again, I apologize for that small hiccup. Once there was no conflictions, it of course worked just fine. Friends, by the way, do not let other friends FortiGate when they're tired. So I always make these videos too late, so I apologize that looking a little sloppy. But you got to admit, if you have multiple FortiGates, there's really not an excuse not to use the security fabric starting in 5.4. So, and 5.6 even made it better with the FortiAnalyzer and all the really neat options that you have there. So I'll have to say that for another video. So, all right, when we get back, we'll go ahead and try to connect that FortiGate that's behind this NAT device and see what it looks like. Maybe it'll break again. Who knows? All right, thanks for watching.